I am in my 30s, kicking myself for a few financial decisions I made out of college. My life could have been so much better. I do not want to have the same regrets in another 20 years. I have a retirement plan and co-own a home, but I am wondering if there is anything else I can do to build and protect wealth over the next few decades. So, men 50 or older, what are your biggest financial regrets? Miss out on that Apple stock? Burn your retirement in Vegas? And what financial advice would you give someone my age specifically? Story 1. A bad marriage cost me $500,000 at the age of 35. She went on and married the person she was cheating with. It took 10 years to recover from that financially, and mentally it took a little longer. I am happy now at 63 with a great wife. Story 2. In the months before the World Wide Web launched, a nerdy friend of mine said, people will want specific internet addresses when this launches. We should buy things like business.com or cars.com so we can sell them later. We looked into it, and URLs cost like $400 each. Way too much to afford. I also remember telling my mom she should buy stock in Apple in the early 80s because I liked my Apple II. She bought stock in Radio Shack instead. Story 3. Not reining in my now ex-wife's spending. I was making great money and she didn't work. She swiped our credit card for a living, and if I said something, she would get nasty. We went through a divorce and she got about 70% of our assets. I had to start building my retirement and health savings account up at age 47. I am doing fine now. If you are eligible, max out a health savings account. Treat it like a Roth individual retirement account and invest, and don't use it for medical expenses until you retire. Mine has gone from zero during my divorce to $50,000 currently. I should have $120,000 to $150,000 by the time I retire. Story 4 was just thinking about this. Back in the early 80s, my grandparents died and selling their house left my dad a little money. He invested some of it on my behalf, but unfortunately, he was not a savvy investor and he put it all in one stock that tanked. I wish he or I had been smart enough to drop it in a simple index fund. It would have absolutely excelled in the 90s. Story 5. Not starting to save for retirement earlier than I did. I didn't start until I was 33 years old. Had I done it in my 20s, I would be in a much better position. Also, not being much more specific about what career I wanted instead of the shotgun, let's see what happens approach, limited my income earning potential and put me behind about 10 years. Story 6. I'm 53. My biggest regret is that I didn't educate myself on money. I didn't know how different accounts worked, how to invest, how to make my money work for me, or how much saving money early would pay off down the road. The biggest thing you can do right now is educate yourself and understand how it all works. I think they need to teach financial literacy in high school. But then the conspiracy theory side of me says they don't want financially literate people. Story 7. No regrets. I regret not investing in Apple when I was 10. My point is, you can't go backwards, so make the most of the path that's in front of you. I'm not a financial advisor, but diversify what you do. Your 401k is locked up, so get a savings account going, look at some index funds, and other investments that will grow but also allow you to pull some cash out in an urgent situation. But also balance your perspective. Money isn't worth anything aside from trading it for something else. I swapped money in college for some amazing times with friends. Save where you can, invest where you're able, but don't deprive yourself of life. Story 8. I regret working so hard at 20 to try and build generational wealth. I went into healthcare making six figures, worked every overtime available, maxed out my 401k and IRA, and invested any extra. There was an accident when I was 32 and lost both my daughter and wife. I was averaging 80 to 85 hours a week at that point. I only regret having an empty house to return to. Financial decisions are important, but if you're overly focused, it could lead to new regrets. Sorry, not your question, but I just wanted to share the other side. That was 5 years ago, and I can't tell you if it gets better. Story 9. I got a small inheritance in 2012. I looked into Bitcoin and almost bought a few thousand coins. I put a down payment on a condo instead. The condo doubled when I sold it. Bitcoin would have changed my life. Story 10. Smoking wasted tens of thousands. Not buying a huge house 25 years ago. Not aggressively getting into buy-to-let. Not taking a few more risky investments. Story 11. Invest. Holy hell, just invest. Have two bank accounts, 10% into one and 90% in the other. If you can do more, do it. Never touch the 10% and have automatic purchases every month with your brokerage account for any index fund. I like dividends, so Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. Look in 20 years. Smile. Buy a boat. Live. Story 12. Do not buy stuff that you do not need, and you do not need anything other than a house, a well-fitted dark suit, postgraduate studies, a hobby, and a rigorous physical fitness routine. That is it. Everything else is replaceable, unnecessary, or can be prioritized to last. Story 13. Don't get married. Keep the classic car, as it'll only appreciate in value. In my friend group, we started a shop fixing cars together. Two guys didn't want to join. After a few years, we built a solid business and sold it, making a good profit even when split 4 ways. The two who opted out regretted it once they realized they could have made a good income while building the business and received a decent buyout when it sold. We were already mechanics, so we were fixing cars anyway. After all was said and done, we made over $60,000 a year each and got over $75,000 buyout each. Our initial investment was $5,000 each to start the shop. Story 14. Not a regret, but buy some quality camping equipment and gear that will last. Get out and backpack, go minimal, get used to dirt, and have fun. So when a situation hits the fan, you are somewhat prepared. It gives peace of mind, and if you hit rock bottom, lose your house, job, etc., it's not that big of a deal. Bonus points if you are comfortable going without health insurance for a while. Finally, make your equipment last and don't tear up your vehicle. Story 15. I had shares of Microsoft at 12 years old, facilitated by my dad. Sold them at 16 years old, bought some dumb stuff that seemed important. If I had held on to them, it would have been worth about $250,000 now. Damn it. Story 16. Not buying the parcel next to my farm. A developer bought it, and now there are over 100 single-family homes with a homeowners association. The only access to my property is through the homeowners association, and despite having a right of transit and the road being classified as an access easement, every few years, there are issues. It seems every few years there is enough turnover on the homeowners association board that they forget this has been litigated, and I'm allowed to bill them for any costs or losses if they restrict access. Story 17. Seeing the slightly older generation than myself get completely screwed over by the reverse mortgage system, my biggest piece of advice is to get your living space paid off and keep it paid off. Story 18. When the dust settles in this thread, the prevailing answer is definitely going to be marriage. Who would have ever thought getting the government involved in your romantic relationship would work out so poorly? Story 19. I'm not 50, but I really should have bought a house in 2008 to 2009 instead of wasting time in high school and playing football. Then in college, a buddy told me about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. He said he was going to buy a couple $1,000s worth and see what it does. I scoffed and said something like internet money was a scam and stupid. He just bought a $2 million boat for his Miami house. Story 20. As an engineer interested in computers from a very young age, coding in the late 1970s, I missed out on the dot-com era. I feel like I should have taken much better advantage of that time. I also wish I had bought Bitcoin in its infancy. Story 21. I bought an apartment overseas. I got divorced and my ex-wife lives in it now. Technically 50% is still mine, but I paid for 95%. And now I am old and have no money to buy a home in my own country. Story 22. Not saving more and sooner. I have been playing catch-up with my retirement account for the last 10+ years to the tune of almost $700 per pay. I will retire in 16 months with a bit over $1 million unless the market crashes again. Story 23. Miss out on that Apple stock? Worse. I sold 10,000 Apple shares to get $8,000 needed for my first house purchase. Apple shares at the time just began to be above water. Since then, the stock split 3 times, which would make the current count of shares about 280,000. In hindsight, that was the most expensive house ever. Story 24. Living in a society where it's not enough to work an honest job, you need to make good financial decisions as well, even from an early age. Your financial mistakes aren't a bug, they're a feature of the system. The system is complex on purpose, and the wealthy make sure their kids know how to work it from an early age, while the rest of us think, if only I had done X, I'd be rich too. It's my own fault. Story 25. Not only for finances, but as a general rule of life, build a good network with competent and positive people in it. There are and will always be ups and downs in your financial life, some due to your mistakes and some due to reasons you can't control. When you are younger, and if you have a bit of ego, you know that you can learn and do anything, but it works out much faster and easier if you have a set of competent people in your network where you can bounce ideas from. Good people always bring you a perspective that you might have missed or did not realize. There is no off-the-shelf answer with a wide blanket coverage for financial stability or improvement. Life is complex and unique. That's been my regret, that I've learned the value of the right people a bit late in life. Good luck. Story 26. I'm not in my 50s, but when I was in my 20s, I wish I had taken investing, particularly in my 401k retirement savings plan, more seriously. I always just did the automatic enrollment amount of 6%, thinking that was good enough, even though I could have been maximizing it due to my low cost of living at the time. Over the last 3 or 4 years, I've prioritized investing and have been maximizing my 401k retirement savings plan contributions and will continue to do so. However, I missed out on a lot of compound interest from the previous decade. Story 27. 1. Dating the wrong woman for too long, hoping things get better. Wasted vacations, presents thousands of dollars on dates, helping them by massively subsidizing their life, getting a second car, paying for all the groceries, or letting them move in, etc. I did a basic spreadsheet, and over 2 decades of dating, I think I could have bought another property that would have appreciated greatly. 2. Divorce. Got married out of school to my childhood sweetheart. Got divorced by 25. Gave up all my savings and investments to pay for lawyers and gave up equity in the house. Not to mention, if I had kept that first condo, bought it for $130,000, 30 years later, the same unit is going for $900,000. Don't get pressured into marriage, and marry a woman that brings more to the table than just her love, looks, and sex. Find someone investment and savings-minded who doesn't dream about some luxury lifestyle. Get a woman who will build with you for early retirement. 3. Modifying cars. I should have just driven cheap cars for the first 5 to 7 years of my youth and then bought better cars later. Instead, I dropped cash on rims, superchargers, big brake kits, etc. I should have just driven stock cars until I could afford the cars I really wanted. 4. Missing the boat on Bitcoin. My business partners and I were researching it around 2010, and instead of taking a light risk on Bitcoin, we bought new office furniture. 5. I had an opportunity to partner with my ex-wife on buying a triplex in an area that was just about to pop. But she didn't want to live in what was a slightly sketchy area. A friend went in with his girlfriend, now wife. Over the years, he bought 3 more. Each of those is revenue generating and probably worth $3.5 to $4 million each. It all worked out in the end. Sold my business, have a great job, a great wife, great kids, and a good nest egg. But it could have been way more. Story 28. Should have bought a small condo when I got my first real job. Just anything that would have gotten me into the real estate game early. But I was more interested in partying than saving at the time. Also, never ever buy furniture or electronics on those buy now, pay later plans. It is never worth it. Just buy used, cheaper, smaller, and so on. It is all just stuff anyway. Story 29. My wife. I will be 55 next year and would be retiring if I had not married my wife. She has not been a financial blessing in my life. She has made it very difficult to invest. That said, I have invested and should probably be able to retire at age 62 with a net worth of $3 million or so. Note: I do not regret marrying my wife and would do it all over again. Story 30. Should have bought a house in Seattle when I was a resident. Could have sold it for 2 to 4 times the cost when I left. Should have put money into my retirement in my 20s instead of starting in my 30s. Should never have bought into my first private practice. What a scam. Ended up losing $30,000 when the practice folded. Story 31. I inherited about $7,000 from my great-grandmother in 1994, and with some meager investments I had started on my own, had about $10,000 altogether. I used it to buy a vehicle, which was a huge mistake. If I had left it and even continued the $100 per month I was investing then, it would be over $150,000 now. Story 32. Buy a house. Any house. A condominium or townhouse to start. Find a way, make it work. There is so much free money from the government for first-time home buyers. You just have to know where to look and who to ask. I got $15,000 for free from the city. It's not your dream home. It's a starter home. Do some basic upgrades and you'll make money for your next house. Story 33. Live as far below your means as you can. Don't chase the latest fad. Buy used cars. Buy real estate. Invest in stocks as well as 401k. It is nice to have liquidity. I am 59, and most of my net worth is in my 401k. I would have preferred to have fewer things, more experiences, and more investments. Story 34. I'm not in my 50s, and neither am I your age, but something that has helped me manage money or prevent regretful purchases was to document every cent I'd spent that week or month. Story 35. Getting married. That was not worth it. 6 months after the divorce, I had more money than I could spend. I will never support a woman again. They just don't offer much. Story 36. I wouldn't think of it as a regret, as I am not into those things as such and still stand by my decision. It's more of a what if, to be honest. I did a project and was offered payment in Bitcoin when Bitcoin was around $25. The client owed me around $10,000. Story 37. My humble opinion is to get a profitable education in electrical, chemical, or computer engineering. Stay out of retail and collections. Information technology is entering a new phase with artificial intelligence taking over.